Hi guys, what are we gonna do today? Today we are going to make these. Are you wondering what this is? Pretty cool. A huge long journal, love letter, anything you want it to be. Stay tuned, we're gonna get started.
So the first thing I'm gonna do to make this wonderful little roll-up journal letter is I'm going to use a piece of burlap, and these are some coffee burlap bags that I had. I want it to be just a little larger than a yard, and I want this 6 inches wide. I'm gonna show you an easy way to cut this into 6 inches. Just make sure I look at my edge. I'm gonna go a little further in. I am gonna start so it's thinner here, and the way this was cut, it got wider out here. So I am gonna take this little thread here, and it almost feels like a gather pull, but I'm just pulling this thread through all the way down. You just want to make sure you're a little ways from the shortest edge, because if you're way out here, you're going to have a huge piece missing here. So you want to make sure you're going to be able to get the thread going through the whole piece. I'm going to continue to just pull this little thread out, and what you're going to get is you're going to get a perfect line on the grain perfectly. If you've ever noticed that with burlap, if it's not a perfect straight cut on the grain, it unravels at an uneven edge. Okay, see this wide line. So what I'm going to do is just cut right in the center of that line, and I know I am perfectly on the grain. So this open space, this line I'm cutting on, is from where I pulled the thread out of. I'm going to make this just a tad bit bigger than 6 inches because my paper is 6 inches. So I think I'm actually going to go to 6.5 inches. So I am just going to make a tiny little cut right here and find a thread again, and just carefully just gather it and pull it. I saved my thread here because I'm going to use it later on in the process. I'm going to use this strand of burlap thread. If your thread is very, very thin and it just keeps breaking, you can use something else. I'm just wrapping it around my finger so it doesn't slide off, and I'm just carefully pulling the gather, trying not to pull it so tightly I just break it. So I'm going to save this piece of thread, and I'm going to put it on a larger eye needle and save this for part of our project later. So what you're going to do now is just cut this line at the exact same way on that opening like you did the other side, and you'll have a perfect 6 inch or 6.5 inch piece. And there you go. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut my paper. This actually you can get at any hardware store, and it's in the paint section. And it's not super lightweight, but it is not heavyweight at all. It's more of a paint paper, and this roll happens to be 6 inches, which makes it perfect. So what I'm gonna do is cut 4 strips of this that are just about an inch or so smaller than my burlap. So I cut 4 strips just under 36 inches. So I have all 4 sheets of these that I've cut, and I'm going to line them up together so they're lined up nicely. I'm about an inch from the end of my burlap. There's going to be a little extra at the top and just a tiny bit extra at the bottom. And what I'm going to do is sew these. I'm going to do a zigzag stitch all the way down, attaching all 4 pieces of these to this edge of the burlap. If you need to, just use a small staple and just staple it here just to keep it in place, and then you can pull that out afterward. So you're only going to zigzag stitch this top edge all the way down to the end, and make sure to leave just a little bit here at the end. If you don't want to machine stitch, you could just use a large eye needle and do a hand running stitch across this. And you can see how this has been sewn in about an inch here at this end. And at this end, I left just a little bit also. So if you need to, trim your paper so you have a little bit of an edge. And now we have 4 pages that we can write on. You could write a wonderful little book in here, or a wonderful letter to someone, or use each page for something different. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we are going to paint this. So I cut a piece of parchment paper. You just need it a little bit bigger than your piece that you're working on. Fold this burlap up. I'm gonna take my parchment paper and fold it up here so it is protecting my paper. And then I'm going to put the burlap back over the top of it. Folding it up so the parchment paper is, and it may move a little, but just up close to where the thread is. And then also you have a little bit there and you have a little extra down here so that when you're painting this, everything is protected. You can use any type of freezer paper, plastic, or anything that you have that would be sturdy, even a chipboard or a cardboard in between this and behind it. I just found this worked really, really well. And on this parchment paper, when the paint goes through, this pulls right up and it doesn't get stuck to it. So I am using my DIY crinoline paint, but really what I wanted to use is some sort of an off-white paint on this project. And you might find that the paint is really going to want to soak up on here. So if you have a spray bottle, this would be a good time just to give it a light spray with some water. Get a little moisture in your burlap so that your paint will spread a little easier. Or you could even just add water to your paint. So I am just gonna let this dry and then we're gonna put a sealer over the top of this. Okay, so this is dry and you can see underneath what this looks like. I'm gonna keep this paper under here while I put my sealer on. I'm using Minwax Polyacrylic Crystal Clear, and this is a gloss, but you can use whatever type of a sealer you would like. You just want a really nice sealer on this because we're gonna be adding a transfer. So it needs to be sealed really well. Transfers like to stick to wonderful, smooth surfaces. This isn't going to be completely smooth, but the poly is going to give it a smoother surface so it will adhere very well. So this is completely dry now. You can see a few of these straggly edges. I'm just going to trim real quick, but the top and bottom shouldn't be too bad because we had cut it perfectly on the grain. Now I'm going to pull this out. You just have a few little dry, straggly pieces of white paint that come through. If you want to, you can seal the inside. If I do, I probably do that at the very end. I just took it out and shook it out a bit. But this is the inside. And this will be the outside. When I have it facing with the paper in the inside, to my left will be the front of the book. Because when I roll this up, I'm going to roll it up from the right side. And this will be my closure. Be right, left to right. So I would start on this side. So that's why I'm rolling it up and mentioning that. I am going to fold this edge down and trim it up just a tad bit. So I'm folding this down. You don't want it covering your paper at all or you won't be able to open your sheets up. And that thread we had pulled out, I put on a needle and I'm just gonna do just a couple running stitches across the front of this, and this will be a little sturdier. You just wanna make sure it doesn't go over your paper. And all I'm doing is finishing the edge here, and it just makes it look fun. And I'm using the same burlap that came off of it. And you could do a running stitch, you could make X's, you could do a blanket stitch, just depending on whatever you would like. If you don't want to stitch it at all, you could glue this edge down. Or you could use eyelets depending on the look you want. So there's just like a million different ideas you could probably come up with depending on the theme of your little roll-up journal. And if you wanted to, you could do the same with the other edge or just leave that edge raw. We are going to add our transfer to this. This edge that I just sewed is going to be the edge that we are going to see first when it's rolled up. So I'm turning it over, and that also reminds me, this is going to be the edge we are going to see when it's rolled up. So I'm going to get my transfer. And I really had fun using my Desperado transfer on this one. You could get quite a few out of just that one transfer. This was part of the skull here, but this also had a lot of really fun words on it. So I'm going to start at my right side, and I'm going to lay this one down first. Because of the very nice sealed fabric, it is actually going on very easily. I just want to hold on to it so it doesn't jump around because my surface still has a lot of bumps in it because it is burlap. I'm going to finish this piece and then we'll move on to the next piece. So here is the second piece I've got, and I'm just kind of lining it up, and I'll transfer this section down. So I've got this side done. I'm going to add something over here. I'm going to add the leaves to this side, and this is from the same Desperado transfer. There's a lot of fun pieces in there that you could use. Okay, let's find something fun for the end here. So I'm just going to burnish this down, and then we are going to seal it one more time so the transfer stays on here. Now, if you wanted to antique this or do anything else to it, that's probably when I would do that now. So I'm going to seal it one more time, but I want to put something underneath it. I pulled my paper out so it's not going to get sealed, and I'm just going to put this underneath because it still is burlap. Even though it's sealed, you're going to have some areas and holes that it's going to want to leak through. What I'm really trying to do is just seal down the transfer. Okay, let's let the sealer dry. So this is completely dry now. Now, do you remember the end, the right side, when we have it facing this way, has that little stitching that we had, and that's going to be the outside of your book. So this is where we're going to start rolling, is on this other edge. I'm going to turn this over, and you can make this as big or as tight as you would like. I am just going to start rolling. It'll crinkle my paper up just a little bit, but I don't mind that at all. What I'm going to do next, this is where my stitching is. I am going to go through both layers here with an awl, or find something that can make a little hole in your fabric. Enough that you can fit a piece of cording. And this is actually elastic cording. I'm just folding this piece in half. I cut mine a little bigger than I thought I might need. So I'm going to try to get the fold through this little hole. And if I have to, I'll get a large eye needle. So from the inside, I am pushing this through. So I just have this little hole that I opened up in between the fibers. And I just pulled the fold right there. Roll this back up. I'm going to hold this end, and I am going to wrap this around to see how tightly I am going to want this. I'm gonna make a knot and then another knot. Take this off. And now where I know where the knot needs to be, I'm just making a few larger knots over those so they don't just go straight through the hole. And now I can just pull on this though and wrap up my little journal. And it's all snug. I can throw it in my bag, and when I would like to write, I can. So the last thing I'm going to show you is different ways you can use the inside of this. You can see this is just blank paper on the inside, and this one is 6 inches wide. I had done another one that I put on this wooden spool, and then the little excess at the end that I had here, I used Tite Bond Quick and Thick and glued that part to the spool. It still doesn't interfere with the paper though. And then I rolled it up, and it's a little shorter. It's probably closer to 4 inches. But you can see I started drawing lines, to-do lists. I could add transfers, stickers, washi tape, make it into a huge long letter, whatever you would like. But then that's the next part. You can decorate your whole inside of this. Now, wasn't that fun? Can you come up with a ton of ideas using a few of the concepts and do your own piece that's individual to what you want it to be? Whether you put it on a stick, on a spool, leave it plain, add more paper, add less. So this transfer was so fun to use. Can you tell that they go together? You could probably get so many things out of that one transfer, the Desperado. I really loved it. I would love to see what you come up with. Hope you give this a try, but whatever you do, have fun.